Delhi, and I am Dr. Rahul Kumar from New Delhi Center for Peace and Economic Prosperity in South Asia. And this center is a non-political, non-profit, and it's purely working for the academic endeavors. Today's topic is a very burning and engaging topic. And I welcome on behalf of the center our distinct speakers, both the speakers. And now I hand over to Dr. Syed Mujtaba ji to start the program. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rahul, so much. And now we are starting our discussion. Rahul was supposed to give a little introduction of our Center for Peace and Economic Development in South Asia. So far, we have done 2 events before. And as he said, that it is a non-political and it is a non-profitable organization. We are all academic people, and we are just wanting, or we are very inquisitive to learn from the speakers about the subjects we are talking about. So we have no vested interest whatsoever, and it is only a band of students like me and other people, Rahul and other people, who want to understand the topics and the issues which is at hand. And we wanted to know from the horse's mouth. That is one of our objectives, not from the academicians who are sitting somewhere else and talking about somewhere else. So, that is the brief introduction of our center. Now, the brief introduction of our speakers of the day. First, the topic of the day. The topic of the day is Jammu and Kashmir after August 5, 2019. The topic is self-explanatory. We are not going into any kind of issues which are involved with the subject itself. We just want to learn what was the situation before 5 August 2019 and what is the situation after that. That's the brief, and I hope the speaker will stick to the same brief. And we are not looking for Jammu and Kashmir solution and the problem and all that. That all is left to the people who are dealing with it. So with this introduction about the topic, my second task is to introduce the speaker. We have today 2 wonderful or very, very, powerful speakers. One is Madam Anuradha Bhasin, who happens to be the voice from Jammu, and she is the executive editor of Kashmir Times. And more than that, she has a long CV. I know her as a journalist, and that's what I want to know her all my life. I knew her father very well, Mr. Ved Bhasin, the late Mr. Ved Bhasin, as a journalist, and I respect and admire him too much. And those who want to learn more about the speaker, please go and Google her name, and you will get all the details. So that's all about the speaker. My second speaker is Mr. Firdaus Baba. He is from the Srinagar, the voice from the Srinagar. All about I know about him is that he is a social activist who lives in Srinagar and who has watched the situation before 5th August 2019 and who is living in Srinagar and watching the situation as it is developing right now. He happens to be among the people, so no other better voice can be there more than the people like Madam Anuradha Bhasin and Mr. Firdaus Baba. I just welcome you to our Center for Peace and South Asia Studies, Center for Peace and Economic Development of South Asia. And I also welcome all the people who have taken the time to come and join us in this discussion. And let's start. We will have the first speaker, Madam Anuradha, to speak us about the Jammu situation. She will have about 10 to 12 minutes. After that, the mic will go to Mr. Firdaus, and he will be also having 10 to 12 minutes of discussion. And then we will have the question answer session. So over to you, Madam Anuradha. Take your time and be on time.
Thank you, Mr. Mujtaba. I think without it's very difficult to actually talk about Kashmir and the present situation in just about 10 to 12 minutes.
Slightly louder.
Is it okay now? Can you hear me?
I'm hearing you, but it's a very feeble voice. I'm hearing you, but it's a very feeble voice. Maybe you have to increase your mic a little bit more. or you have to shout. That's all.
Yeah, okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, I'm not going to waste time because as it is, 10 minutes is too short a time to talk about Kashmir, but I'll try to fit in as much as possible. And I'll stick to the situation that has been imposed in Jammu and Kashmir since Article 370 deoperationalization on August 5th, 2019. First of all, comes into question the legality of the move. Was it legal enough? There are already cases pending in the courts, and lots of petitions have been filed whether this was okay. There have been enough legal opinions written before the abrogation and after the abrogation about the constitutional impossibility of revoking Article 370. And I do not want to go into that, but I would like to point out one thing that if any amendments had to be made to Article 370, and amendments were made in the past, there were some erosions to Article 370, it had to be done with the concurrence of the Constituent Assembly, which was not there, which does not exist. It was dissolved in 1950s. And thereafter, if the modification powers could be used to substitute the Constituent Assembly with the State Legislative Assembly, which also was not existing. So while the parliament gets to decide what the future of Jammu and Kashmir is, the people of Jammu and Kashmir were not only kept in the dark, they were put under a stringent lockdown, particularly in Kashmir Valley and in the Muslim majority districts of Jammu region, where there was a strict lockdown. Internet was shut off. Random arrests had been affected, and including incarceration of the entire political mainstream political activists and leaders, killing the entire political space. Now, what was promised by the Indian government while announcing and celebrating the abrogation of Article 370 and striking down Article 35A, while also dismembering the state and dividing it into two units, demoting each one of them from state to union territories. What was promised was peace, development, gender rights. KPs, Kashmiri Pandits will now be taken back to their homes, and that there would be meaningful democracy in Jammu and Kashmir now. 2 years, more than 2 years on, what has really happened? Where is the democracy? It continues to be in shambles because people in Jammu and Kashmir continue to live in a climate of fear and under extreme surveillance to the extent that there is complete intolerance to dissent today anywhere in India, but in Kashmir it is 100 times more. Any dissent qualifies for summons to police stations or cases being slapped, including against media persons, particularly, in fact, against media persons who bear the worst brunt of, the tendency by the state to impose and enforce a silence on the people. Their people's rights are scuttled, basic civil rights. You cannot protest, you cannot go to the mosques. On Fridays, all the main mosques are shut, and all these things that people there are random crackdowns, frisking operations have gone up. All these things tend to push people towards more and more radicalization, tend to alienate people to the point that they become bitter and they are fed with immense hatred. The state looks at the people of Jammu and the Muslim majority of Jammu and Kashmir as the enemy. The lines between the terrorist and the Kashmiri Muslim, particularly, and a Pakistani, are completely blurred. And that is how the Muslims are receiving this. As far as the other ethnic and religious groups are concerned, including the Hindu majority of Jammu region, they have become a collateral damage in the process, having lost at least a fraction of their civil liberties, as compared to with respect to Kashmir. Um, then there was also this promise that there would be peace. So have we really achieved peace? The officials would often tend to quote a lot of statistics to say that terrorism is on its last legs or it's completely diminished. There are a lesser number of terrorists, more and more terrorists are being killed. And how this is being they're reaching to this conclusion is only on the number of militants they end up killing in operations. There is no calculation of how more and more youth are now today willing to pick up the gun. Added to that is the new threats and challenges posed by the Afghanistan situation, and which is not being factored in. It's not just being not factored in. There is no attempt by Indian government to open up diplomatic channels, either with Pakistan, with Afghanistan, or with China, which is nibbling at the borders since it's always been doing that, but it has become much more brazen after 2019, because one of these, the Article 370 abrogation has been used as an excuse by China to enter the Ladakh borders. I'll try to conclude 2-3 more points. In October, in fact, about 30 civilians have been killed in the last 1 year in Kashmir. And that is a worrying sign, because it's not just the security forces who are being targeted, it is also the civilians, and a lot of minorities have been killed in October. And this, is a mock at the claims of the government that Kashmiri Pandits would be brought back. Here are the Kashmiri Pandits who were already living in the valley. Today, they feel threatened. There are also, in terms of development, there have been new, the government has been talking about development, but development models do not necessarily mean that local people are benefiting out of that. Recent figures show that unemployment in Jammu and Kashmir is the highest at 21%. New land laws have been introduced, which are aimed at dispossessing the locals. There is a tendency to encourage a lot of business investments from outside, threatening monopolistic controls by outsiders. Mining contracts have been given to outsiders, and this will also have an ecological fallout on the fragile ecology of Jammu and Kashmir. I would just like to end here and say, this entire model was for integration of Jammu and Kashmir with mainland India. The integration does not only mean that integrating a territory, it also means integrating people. Where are the people in this project? Thank you.
Okay. Okay, madam. We now move to the next speaker and we will have, I hope, some question answer session. So we are now straight away going to our next speaker, Mr. Firdaus Baba, who is from Srinagar, and he is going to give us a perspective from the valley. Over to you, sir.
Yes, very good evening to all the viewers. Firstly, thanks to Center for Peace and Economic Prosperity and South Asia for providing such a platform to express our views. As Madam has already mentioned the legal aspects of the situation or the that issue which that took place in 5th August 2019. I must add regarding the J&K after 5th August voice from ground zero. I must say that there is no big change on ground vis-a-vis development is concerned. These are hollow claims the central government is making. I have some data that about 5 lakh people lost jobs due to this which was taken by the Parliament of Government of India, and then followed by the COVID. This is the Chamber of the Economic, which is the apex body of business heads here in Jammu and Kashmir. Their data reveals that about 5 lakh jobs were lost, and about 50,000 business establishments who are unable to pay their debts are about to wind up due to this decision. Then nextly, I must say that people are deprived of the genuine political rights, as Madam has mentioned as well. About 5,000 people were imprisoned on August 5th, and some of these are still imprisoned who are not
Please
released.
please mute your sound. Please mute other people. Let's listen to the speaker. Mute your devices.
Yes. There is media gagging. You cannot speak about the against the government. You cannot make your voice against. You cannot criticize even the government. You will be dealt with PSA or any other draconian or laws. People sit all imprisoned who were arrested on August 2019. They have not been released as of now. You say, as Madam has already mentioned, that 500, I think, 500 canals of land were transferred to security forces. Now, when they claim that Article 370 removal will root out the basic these roots of the militancy, then what's the fun of importing these security forces more and more? Regarding the militancy, the worrisome is that there is an increase in the joining of militancy groups. Locals are joining. That's worrisome and alarming. 120 locals among 200 active militants have joined the militancy since 2020. It's the report article mentioned in BBC. My Ernestville state has lost about 4.56 lakh jobs due to the abrogation of Article 370. No special package is offered from the central government. Their claims that we are making 50,000 jobs is a hoax. That's a hollow claim. No jobs on ground. There are some development projects which were already given by UPA government, or they are highlighting these. The NDA government is highlighting these. We have issued these recently. The Home Minister, when visited the state, he claimed that international flights have been started from Srinagar airport, but it was already upgraded to international airport in UPA government. So they claim to have a three-tier government in the three-tier Panchayat Raj system in state hold elections like DDC elections, BDC elections, and Panchayat elections, but they were not empowered up to the expectations, and state is run by the bureaucrats who are not public representatives. So that means recently when Home Minister visited the state, you know, about 900 boys were arrested who were allegedly as per police reports working as OGWs. That means yeah, or recently the match which was played between India and Pakistan, you know, three boys from Kashmir who were under studies in Agra, the UAPA was slapped on them, and and even the liars denied to have their audible? Yes, there were almost two-wheeler bikes were seized by the police on the account of security reasons. There is no justification for such moves by the government. This is what all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Firdaus Baba. And Rahul, if you have any question, and I ask other speakers to please write your question in the chat box, and we will ask the speaker. You don't have need to speak the question because that will be a waste of time. So just write your questions in the chat box. We will speak, and you know that answer will be speakers will be giving. So Rahul, can you start asking any questions?
Yes, Dr. Mustafa, thank you so much. You have conducted very nicely. And I have a very brief question for Madam Anuradha Basinji, because she has given a lot of information from the ground. My question to her is that New Delhi administration, they have been inviting ambassadors from many consulates. They're from Delhi to Srinagar, and they have also given a public statement in the media that in the Kashmir there is a normalcy returning to Kashmir and peace is also establishing. How do you think that such statement by these ambassadors from Delhi will support the claims made by the current establishment from New Delhi?
Yes,
Thank you.
madam.
You know, I mean, they've been talking about, the Indian government has been talking about normalcy right from the day one. The day that Article 370 was abrogated, there was absolute silence from Kashmir because there were no communication channels and you could not hear anybody's voices. They have been talking about that since then. The ambassadors who have been flown in are select ambassadors that were taken on a chaperoned visit, who met a select group of people who were cherry-picked for these meetings. They were taken to select places to visit, and particularly a boat ride, a Dal Lake Shikara ride is always a must in that. Other than that, I have been hearing, I mean, there is feedback from, say, the US embassy, for instance, or the other embassies, which would like to go on their own and meet people on their own, not those dictated by the Indian government. They are not being given the permission to go to Kashmir. They have come till some of these diplomats have come till Jammu, but they have not been able to go till Kashmir. And this whole normalcy narrative is built up through a dominant media, not just through ambassadors, that is for the international, to impress the international image, which has taken a battering because of India's but locally they are controlling the narrative through a dominant media which continues to talk about how things are getting better in Kashmir. So many measures are being taken for democracy, for peace, etc., etc. And but at the same time, the local population is continuously vilified and demonized on a day-to-day basis.
Some of the foreign companies like DP World, they have recently announced some an investment going to be done by them in Kashmir. Is it right that they are really doing an investment, making an investment, or just they are, projecting themselves, they are coming, and not coming?
Right. A lot of
This is
these
limited to
investments we get to
signing
hear
MOUs only.
after they have been, I mean, for instance, new projects have been started. Many of them are something to do with the religious projects. Like there is a Tirupati temple has been given 500 canals of land on lease. I mean, these are throwaway prices that they are being given, and it's a massive dense forest land where the project is going to take over. Other than that, we've seen of whatever business investments have come, if land has been allocated for a certain project, there is a lot of hush hush. I mean, there is no openness about what exactly is being done. And I don't think, any sane business person, unless and until they feel that they can make a lot of money out of a certain project, they're not going to invest their money in a place where the climate is not conducive. So what is really happening is the only investments that we see visible are the ones that are related to mining. And that itself is alarming because if, it's changing the entire ecosystem or the existing ecosystem of locals involved in mining, which were usually low key operations, because these were not very powerful lobbies. And the manner of mining, say stone quarrying or sand beds, mining in the sand beds, riverbeds, these were manually done. So now when the big money is coming, big machines are coming, big, tenders have been floated. So obviously the mining operations have been scaled up phenomenally. And there is 20 times at least more extraction according to some reports, which has already impacted the agricultural practices in many areas, because there's no water left for the locals.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Over to you, Dr. Mustafa.
Okay. I mean, quickly, my question is from where we started actually. I mean, both of you have given a very good perspective, and we all have been reading this. I am from Chennai, so we have been reading all this, what has been talked about. I mean, but the basic, the inquisitiveness of all the Indians is, has the situation changed from 5 August 2019? What was before? I know that the situation before was not very good and not very pretty, and now nor it is good or pretty after that. But we want to hear from you in a very short, that how is the situation after 5th August 2019? Your voice. Mr. Firdaus, you can take off.
Yes, there is an alienation. People feel deceived. People have no expectations from the government, as there are no public representatives as well. There has not been elections so far, assembly elections. No doubt there were BDC elections, as I mentioned earlier. There were panchayat elections, there were DDC elections as well. But that's not solving the problem. They had not been empowered. That means there is a big gap between public and the administration, which needs to be shortened, which needs to be filled up. That's the situation over here.
Madam, you have to say anything. What was the situation before and after?
Well, situation in Jammu and Kashmir has never been good. And that's been so in the last 70 years, more visible in the last 30 years since 1990. Of course, there were ups and downs. And before 2019, there was an increasing discontent amongst the local public in Kashmir Valley. The divisions between the different regions of Jammu and Kashmir, where actually the religious and the regional fault lines crisscross with each other, and these divisions were being there were wider gaps. So this was the setting in which the abrogation of Article 370 came. And what we have seen, yes, we have seen changes. We have seen changes that the discontent has multiplied, the alienation has multiplied, the anger is multiplying, and the anger which was only limited to Kashmir Valley is extending to rest of the state, even to Ladakh. So
Yes,
this
yes.
is the
I
change
will.
we see
I will
today.
add something more. The militancy which we have seen, it was limited to Kashmir region only. Now it has spread its wings to parts of the Jammu as well. You might have you might be knowing about the recent encounter which is going on in Punch. That it has spread its roots to Jammu as well. That's worrisome.
So, just one last question, which I'll ask. I have just got 4 minutes and 34 seconds left. And the question is that, just give me one line to speak, to my question, that New Delhi has always adopted carrot and stick policy for Jammu and Kashmir since independence of India. Now what we have seen is this only the stick policy, which is now, quite apparent, and only stick, no carrot. That is what it looks to me from Chennai. How far this stick policy is going to be beneficial for Jammu and Kashmir? Will it help the people, or it is not going to be any of use? Your views.
I'll go first. The carrot and stick policy has been turned into stick policy now. And even if you can see some carrots being doled here and there, it's not going to last for very long. Basically, it's just about tyranny, and it's about suppressing the local population. And obviously, this thing is not good for any democratic setup. It is not good for the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It is not good for Jammu and Kashmir, but it is also not good for rest of India. Because when this backfires, it may take time. It's a matter of timing. When this backfires, it's going to explode right in the face of rest of India, and I would say also rest of South Asia.
Yes, you are. Yes, when you are snatching jobs from the employed youth or employed people that in the name of so-called national interest or threat to the Indian integrity, that means you don't leave any option for them other than pushing them to the wall and alienating them more. That's totally worrisome and troublesome for it will obviously alienate the people, and it will widen the gap between administration and the people.
Okay, now it's time. Only 2 minutes and 14 seconds are left. So now only Thanksgiving. and thanks to the speaker for such a wonderful conversation we got. The gist of actually it is not, you can spend 100 hours also, you cannot end this discussion. But I thank both the speakers for bringing their perspective. The center appreciates, their point of views, but they're definitely, they are their point of view, and we leave it to there itself. The concluding point is that this policy of the center, which we are witnessing from the 5th August 2019, is not going to lead anywhere. It can go somewhere, but it is not going to lead to the final conclusion. That's my personal opinion, and not necessarily of the center's opinion. And with this note, I hand over to Dr. Rahul to say the final words. He has only 1 minute and 16 seconds. Dr. Rahul.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Mustafa. And I thank you of both the speakers, and they have really done a very great job. And we look forward to see them again in future also. And thank you very much, our president also, Mr. Mustafa, for conducting such a nice program. Thank you so much.
Thank you for all the participants to be here, and we look forward for our next program, and we will be discussing about Bangladesh, religious extremism in Bangladesh and its implication on India and South Asia. I just announced this. You will get the invitation, and I look forward to meet you then. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you very much.